I'm Stephen Foskett, organizer of Tech Field Day and Gestalt IT, and we are here at Amazon AWS reInvent 2019 in Las Vegas. We are visiting a few companies, learning about what they're doing, especially companies that we're familiar with from here at Gestalt IT and at Tech Field Day. Now I'm here with Curtis Preston, Chief Technical Evangelist for Druva, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that means that your job is to tell people about the great things that Druva is doing, right?
Well, and also to sort of explain why we do things the way we do and why that's important.
Cool. Well, there's been a lot of things going on actually. This morning here, Tuesday of AWS reInvent, we had a lot of announcements. One of the biggest announcements is the general availability of AWS Outposts, which is something I know that a lot of enterprise companies have been very excited about hearing about. And I understand that Druva's deeply involved here, right?
Yeah, Outposts is going to bring a lot of possibilities for us, both with our Cloud Ranger offering, which is a native AWS offering, and also for Phoenix, which does data center. So it's a big announcement for us.
So tell me a little bit more about how Druva works in Amazon AWS Outposts.
So there are a couple of different ways. So one of the requests that we get from customers for the data center offering is they want to have a local cache of their data before sending it to the cloud. And so we've always offered Cloud Cache as an option, and it's a free of charge option, but they would need an appliance to run it on, right? They would supply their own appliance. But we've never wanted to be an appliance company, right? So what Outposts gives us the opportunity to do is to run our Cloud Cache software on an appliance that the customer can get from Amazon. So they get an appliance without having to actually purchase an appliance. So they can just have it supplied by Amazon.
So in a way, it's essentially you're using someone else's hardware, in this case the Amazon hardware, but theoretically anyone who's using Outposts is going to be somebody who's deeply in the Amazon AWS work
right.
Environment. They're going to be using it for all sorts of things.
Right.
And this is sort of a natural extension from Druva's existing work in AWS Cloud.
Right, exactly. So that's what we did for Phoenix.
Yep.
The other thing is that because Outposts will have, it will allow the customer to have EC2 workloads on, in their data center, those workloads need to be protected. So our other part of the product does native protection for EC2. And so we will be doing that using the Cloud Ranger offering, and that will also work with Outposts as well.
Excellent. So, because that's sort of the enterprise work use case for Amazon AWS going forward.
Right.
In the enterprise, there's a lot of excitement about cloud generally and AWS cloud specifically. And we talked a little bit about Outposts, which would bring the AWS cloud into the data center. But there's so many ways that the enterprise data center is being integrated with the cloud, with AWS, with the various AWS services. And I know that Druva has been deeply involved in this trend of basically moving the enterprise into the cloud and moving the cloud into the enterprise.
Right. Yeah, we have a cloud-first mentality, right? And so we do data center backup and mobile device backup and cloud backup, and we do all of that to the cloud, right? So, but we know that there will always continue to be workloads in the cloud, and one of those things, or one of the ways that people are doing that will be Outposts, right? And the idea is that it's really interesting to see Amazon, which was way over there for a really long time. So with RDS, there was an RDS announcement, and then also with Outposts, you see them moving more and more into the data center, and it's just sort of interesting to see how the company's moving.
The enterprise is really interested in AWS, sure, but I think that they're also interested in a real integrated approach to cloud, where the applications that they use are truly cloud native. And I know that this has been a big thing that Druva has been working on as well, to try to basically build a cloud native enterprise data protection solution.
Right. And so what Druva decided to do was to program directly to the AWS architecture. So when we need a database, we use RDS. When we needed a key value pair NoSQL database, we used DynamoDB. When we needed storage, we used S3, not block, right? And so by doing all of those things, we get a lot of things. We get scalability and we get cost advantages, right? So when you look at like something like RDS or DynamoDB, you pay only when you use it. Whereas, anybody that's doing the VM style method, they're paying constantly, even if the backup server is doing nothing, right? So we program directly to that architecture, then move forward several years. When that architecture expands into the data center, we get to take immediate advantage of that, right? So we're working very tightly with AWS right now to make sure that everything that we have works on Outposts, for example.
Yeah, and it does. I think that the key there is that it seems very likely that several years from now, this will be the standard data center architecture. I mean, it's going to be about services. It's going to be about cloud services, that you use as you go. And I think more and more, providers that are selling into the enterprise and deploying solutions into the enterprise are going to be provisioning them the same way that you would provision cloud services, except in the data center, right?
Right. I think like we move forward, 20 years, there will still be a data center, there will still be tape.
Yeah.
There will still be mainframes, but there will still be data centers, and so there are workloads that are more appropriate to run in a local data center, and there are workloads that are more appropriate to run in the cloud. And with AWS moving into the data center, this lets customers that are familiar with the AWS architecture leverage that, and the fact that we're leveraging it lets our customers do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's really an interesting approach to this whole enterprise cloud concept is, as you said, to basically take these strategies and architectures and solutions that are working in the cloud and figure out ways of deploying those in the enterprise.
Right.
And I also think it's, frankly, kind of remarkable that you really haven't talked. I mean, you're Mr. Backup. You really haven't talked much about backup. I mean, to hear you, it's like a whole new Curtis.
It's a whole new. I would rebrand myself as Mr. Restore, but there's another guy or Mr. Recovery. I think there's another guy that's done that. But this does offer a lot of advantages, and when we talk about backup and recovery, I think one of the big ones is being able to have that cache of data, right? And you can only do that with an appliance. And we don't want to sell an appliance, so this allows us to give our customers that without having to sell them something.
Yeah. So I know that this is Amazon's big announcement day, but I heard that there was a Druva announcement today as well, and I know that you're more of the strategy guy, but you want to make sure that you mention that, right?
Yeah, so you and I have been in the technical space for a long time, and a lot of times you see a really interesting technical product. I'm sure you've done a few at Tech Field Day, and one of the things you ask is, well, will anybody ever actually buy this? And the answer is yes, with Druva. So what we announced today is that we have reached $100 million in annual recurring revenue. So that's and for those that don't follow the space that closely, that's very different than companies that sell hardware and software. They might have bigger numbers, but that's not recurring revenue. Our revenue is, we basically start every year with 100%, and then we just grow on top of that. And so the announcement today was $100 million in ARR, which is a pretty big.
Yeah, well, and I've been in the service provider space as well, and I understand that one of the remarkable things about a big ARR number is that it's that R, the first R, which is that it's recurring. And so it's not just we sold $100 million worth of gear, it's we've signed people up to pay us this much again and again and again,
Yeah, and as long as you keep your customers happy, you get built-in growth, right? Our number goes up and down, of course, but in the SaaS space, you measure what's called net retention, right? And so we have a net retention that is in excess of 120%, meaning that, including attrition, if you take the average customer, if they spend $1 this year, they'll spend $1.20 next year. So you get built-in 20% growth, and then you just need some new sales on that to get to a bigger number. So it's a beautiful thing.
Which is awesome. I mean, neither of us is really the sales and number and finance kind of person, but it's wonderful to hear that Druva is doing well, that Druva has happy customers that are buying more and continuing to use it, because that means that all of us will have more time to develop the product and see it grow.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Curtis. It's great to run into you here at AWS reInvent. Those of you who watch this, please do tune in at gestaltit.com. You can also find us on Twitter at gestaltit. And if you search YouTube for Gestalt IT, you'll find lots more videos other than this, including the weekly rundown of enterprise IT news and our on-premise IT roundtable podcast. So Curtis, where can we find you?
So you can read my blog at backupcentral.com, which I'm excited to say this year is actually 20 years that I've been doing that blog. And also the Restore It All podcast. It's a weekly podcast where we talk about all things backup and restore. It's not an official Druva podcast, it's my podcast, we talk about all different topics. So make sure to check that out. Just Restore It All wherever you get your podcasts.